So good evening to everyone. Today I'm going to discuss another topic of research, which is a hypothesis, right? Under the hypothesis, we will discuss concept and meaning of hypothesis, nature of hypothesis, types of hypothesis, formulation, how we have to formulate the hypothesis, or last में we will discuss about the characteristics of the good hypothesis, right? Hypothesis क्या होता है? You have to understand. This is a very important one. हाइपोथेसिस बेसिकली एक स्टेटमेंट है. हाइपोथेसिस एक सपोजिशन है. हाइपोथेसिस एक रफली गेस है, राइट. हाइपोथेसिस टॉक्स अबाउट द इट इज ए स्टेटमेंट और assumptions अबाउट रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन वेरिएबल्स, राइट. मतलब इट टॉक्स अबाउट इट इज ए टेंटेटिव सोल्यूशन. Means guys, you have to remember whatever your research topic would be, right? You have to formulate the hypothesis first, then you have to work on the hypothesis, right? What is a hypothesis? Hypothesis is a tentative solutions of the problem. What is hypothesis? Hypothesis is a guess of the problem. What is a hypothesis? Hypothesis is a assumptions of the problem which is going to be studied, okay? Which is under study. This is called hypothesis. Now I tell you about I understand term of a hypothesis, right? So I have written here the two topics. The first topic of research topic is awareness of rights among women in rural areas, okay? And second is that what impact does daily use of a Facebook have on study attentions of under 19s, right? Hypothesis हमने अभी just we discussed the hypothesis. Hypothesis, it talks about the relationship. It talks about the relationship between the variables, right? So guys, here you have to remember, for making a hypothesis, at least there should be a dependent variable and independent variable, okay? आप इसको ऐसा समझो, if your study या your research topic contains only one variable, it would not be called as a, उसका hypothesis नहीं बनेगा. Hypothesis always talk about the relationship between the variables, okay? And most important, relationship of the dependent and independent variables, okay? Ab tell me, what is in this topic awareness of a rights among women in rural areas? What is dependent variable and what is independent variable? Here, dependent variable is women in the rural areas because they are dependent upon the rights of whether they have the rights, whether they are aware of rights or not, right? So here is a two variable in this study. We are looking that one is dependent and one is independent. So that means we can make the hypothesis of this research topic, right? Similarly, the second research topic is that what impact does daily use of Facebook have on the study attentions of under 19s? So that means in this topic, first of all, we have to see that whether there is a existence of dependent variable and independent variable. So we see in this statement, we have the dependent variable of adolescent and independent variable of social media, means Facebook, because we want to check that effect of independent variable on the dependent variable, means effect of, simple term में effect of या impact of Facebook on the dependent variable which is adolescent. So that means my research topic contains dependent variable and independent variable, तो I am pretty sure that इसका भी hypothesis बन जाएगा. तो क्यों? क्योंकि hypothesis talks about the relationship between the variable also, okay? So here hypothesis, okay, hypothesis and assumption about relations, okay? In the last line I have written that relations between the variables and can be empirically tested, okay? So in short, now we conclude about the hypothesis. Hypothesis basically, what is hypothesis? Hypothesis basically, it is an assumptions. It talks about relationship between the variables, and most importantly, डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल एंड इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल. नेक्स्ट इज हाइपोथेसिस. क्या चीज है? इट इज ए टेंटेटिव सॉल्यूशंस टू द प्रॉब्लम है. ये एक गेस है अबाउट द रिसर्च आउटकम. ओके. My third point indicates that research hypothesis contains independent variable and dependent variable, which I have just discussed with you. My fourth point tells you about that hypothesis. If there is one variable in any of statement, yeah, in any of the topic, it cannot be called the research hypothesis. Right? Remember this thing. उस केस के अंदर वो स्टडी कोई केस स्टडी या कुछ ऐसा हो जाएगी, बट वी कैनॉट कॉल द रिसर्च हाइपोथेसिस, बिकॉज रिसर्च हाइपोथेसिस के लिए आपकी स्टडी में कम से कम डिपेंडेंट और इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल होने चाहिए. एंड माय फिफ्थ पॉइंट ऑफ हाइपोथेसिस से दैट इफ देयर आर टू डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल इन एनी ऑफ द स्टेटमेंट बट देयर इज नो इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल, तब भी उस स्टडी को रिसर्च हाइपोथेसिस नहीं कहा जाएगा. Right? So in a very simple terms, you have to remember for a hypothesis, there is a need of a dependent variable and independent variable should be present in the research topic. Only then we can frame the hypothesis. Right? So we move to the next one. What is the nature of the hypothesis? Nature of a hypothesis. Hypothesis say that hypothesis should reflect the relevant sociological fact. Means it should reflect whatever the researcher is going to be studying. Okay, there is a one topic researcher is going to be studying and we make the hypothesis of that particular topic. वो जो hypothesis है, it should reflect whatever the researcher is going to study. Right? Next है nature of hypothesis का, कि hypothesis जो है it should specify variables between which the relationship is to be established. Right? आपने just you have to understand कि भाई when we are doing any kind of a research, तो basically ना we are talking about the variables, right? In a statistical term, we are establishing any theory, we are establishing any generalizations of any theory या any phenomena we are going to establish when we do research of any of the topic. Okay, and what is a hypothesis? हाइपोथेसिस क्या होता है कि वो जो रिसर्च टॉपिक होता है उस रिसर्च टॉपिक का हम हाइपोथेसिस बनाते हैं एंड वी वर्क ऑन दैट हाइपोथेसिस. राइट? सो नेक्स्ट इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट, व्हाट आर द टाइप्स ऑफ हाइपोथेसिस. हाइपोथेसिस के कितनी कितनी टाइप्स हैं? तो वन इज डायरेक्शनल एंड नॉन डायरेक्शनल हाइपोथेसिस. Okay, some hypotheses are directional, some are non-directional. How we will come to know? When any of the research topic it talks about higher or lower, then it is called, matlab it is talking about the one direction. This is called the directional hypothesis. For example, the intelligence level of girls are, higher than the boys. So we are talking about one directional. This is a directional hypothesis. Okay. If I talk about the intelligence level of girls are less than the boys, I'm also talking about the, one directional. So this is called the directional hypothesis. Right? So when any of the hypothesis talks about the directions, either lower, either higher, this is called the directional hypothesis. Okay. And non-directional hypothesis क्या होता है? What is a non-directional hypothesis? If there is no difference between the intelligence level of boys and girls, if there is no difference between the achievement in mathematics of boys and girls, means there is no direction is establishing. This is called a non-directional hypothesis. Right? Next आ गया research hypothesis and null hypothesis. This is the most important hypothesis, and most of the time you get a questions in your question paper. Define the research hypothesis and null hypothesis. So we understand carefully about the research hypothesis and the null hypothesis. Okay. So I have given the example one, example of research hypothesis, and second example of null hypothesis. Okay. First of all, before starting this, you have to understand जो null hypothesis होता है, null hypothesis we deduce from the research hypothesis. Okay, null hypothesis जो होता है, right, we get from the research hypothesis, right. research hypothesis क्या होता है? research hypothesis हमारी study होती है, whatever the topic of our study. Okay, this is called the research hypothesis. I have given one example. There is difference between levels of intelligence of boys and girls. Okay, this is my topic. I want to study on this topic up to whole med course up to the 2 year. I want to check the difference between the level of intelligence of boys and girls of Punjab district. Okay, for example, right, this is my research topic. Okay, and this is another name of my research hypothesis is called alternative hypothesis, and it is represented by H1, right. तो हमारा जो रिसर्च हाइपोथेसिस होता है उसी को हम अपना अल्टरनेटिव हाइपोथेसिस भी बोलते हैं, which is called and also called the H1, and statistically it is defined as H1, right. Second है example of null hypothesis. Just I have talked about you that null hypothesis हम हमेशा अपना जो टॉपिक है रिसर्च हाइपोथेसिस से ही निकालते हैं, राइट. तो नल हाइपोथेसिस टॉक्स अबाउट नल. तो इन दिस केस इफ माय रिसर्च टॉपिक इज दैट देयर इज डिफरेंस बिटवीन लेवल ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस ऑफ बॉयज एंड गर्ल्स, तो देन व्हाट वुड बी माय नल हाइपोथेसिस? माय नल हाइपोथेसिस वुड बी देयर इज नो डिफरेंस इन द लेवल्स ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस ऑफ बॉयज एंड गर्ल, राइट. तो this would be my null hypothesis which is under study, which up to the 2 years I have to study on this topic. There is no difference in the level of intelligence of boys and girls. Instead of जो मेरा original topic था, what was my original topic या research topic क्या था? There is difference between level of intelligence of boys and girls. I don't have to study on that. I have to study on my null hypothesis, because every research topic ko there is a need of a null hypothesis. Unless or until if you don't make the null hypothesis, so you don't get the direction in which directions you have to work. So when you make the null hypothesis and after 2 years you establish this theory that whether your null hypothesis is accepted or rejected. There would be a 2 cases. In a one case, अगर आपका null hypothesis is accepted, तो अल्टरनेट हाइपोथेसिस है इट वुड बी रिजेक्टेड, और अगर आपका नल हाइपोथेसिस इज रिजेक्टेड तब आपका ओरिजिनल हाइपोथेसिस या रिसर्च हाइपोथेसिस है इट वुड बी एक्सेप्टेड. तो यहां पर यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड वन थिंग. ओके, जो नल हाइपोथेसिस होता है हमारा वो रिसर्च हाइपोथेसिस ही होता है विच इज टू बी टेस्टेड, राइट. सो नेक्स्ट इज ए फॉर्मुलेशंस ऑफ ए हाइपोथेसिस. हाउ वी हैव टू फॉर्मुलेट द हाइपोथेसिस. ओके, तो फॉर्मुलेशन ऑफ ए हाइपोथेसिस में देयर इज ए नो कोई स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड टर्म नहीं है. these are the but some of the steps which you have to take care of that. Okay, when you are going to formulate the hypothesis, and you should remember that this is the third step of the research. Okay, I recall you what would be our 7 steps of the research. The first step is identifications of the problem. Second is review of related literature. Third is formulation of the hypothesis. Fourth is design and procedure. Fifth is interpretations of the result. Sixth is implications of the research topic, and seventh is research report. So this is the third topic which we are going to discuss, how to formulate the hypothesis. So whenever we have to formulate the hypothesis, we have to take care about that defining variables, right. We have to see the variables which I have just discussed. We have to see what are the dependent variables and what are the independent variables. Okay, then we have to study in depth about the variables. Okay, research is talking about the variables. Okay, wo to English mein we talk about the topic, but when we are talking about the research is talking about the variables in a statistical term. Okay, third is we have to see the nature of relationship kya hai un variables ke andar. Okay, फिर make sure that these variables are testable or not testable. Means whatever the topic we are going to formulate the hypothesis, whether this topic is valid or not, whether this topic is testable or not testable, right? And we have to avoid the judgmental word. Okay, we don't have to select any type of a topic and we have to formulate the hypothesis of any type where we become judgmental, right? Basically we are the emotional. Okay, emotionally we don't have to take any of the topic and formulate the hypothesis, and we first of all we already uh, uh, establish a result. That would be the result. Okay, whenever we are formulating a hypothesis, we don't have to judgmental, right? Be sure that, next point is that, be sure that each term in your hypothesis is clearly understood and defined. Okay, and last one is that know that about your hypothesis may change over time as your research progress. तो याद रखना guys, what is a research? Research क्या होता है? It is a continuous study, right? And review of related literature क्या होता है? Review of related literature means, या research means क्या होता है? What is the meaning of research? Research meaning that where the previous researcher has left, and when we start that research, and when we do, even when we go even a 1 inch forward, this is called a research. Okay, so whatever when we have to define our topic, when we are going to select the topic, when we are going to formulate the hypothesis, so we have to see that there should be a मतलब future applications of future, means that topic should be change, या उसमें there is a need of कोई ना कोई उसके अंदर modifications होना ही चाहिए, right? With the changing of the time. So these are the some of the steps which you have to take care of that while formulations of the hypothesis, right? And the last one is that characteristics of the good hypothesis. So as I have already discussed that good hypothesis should be easily understood, easily defined. Okay, hypothesis should be a testable. We don't have to use the judgmental words. Okay, characteristics of a good hypothesis means that we have to see the relationship between the variables. There should be a relationship of the variables, and these variables should be testable, right? It must actually explain what it claims to explain. It is the most important. The characteristics of a is that it must actually explain what it claims to explain. This is a characteristics of a good hypothesis. And good hypothesis guarantees you there is a availability of a tool and techniques which will be used whatever the variable you are going to formulate, right? And last one is that it must explain the facts that gave rise to the need for explanations, right guys? So that was about the characteristics of the good research. So thank you so much.